Hello, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. My name is Emma. In today's video I'm going to be talking through what I read in autumn and what I'm planning to read in December. A couple of months ago I filmed a video talking through my autumn TBR, and I thought it'd just be nice to do a little update and let you know what I'm planning on reading in the winter months, because I really enjoy talking about books and it's something that I would kind of like to incorporate a little bit more into my channel. So I thought if I do like these seasonal wrap-ups, that'd be a nice way to keep you updated on what I've been reading and what I'm planning on reading. I do also have a Goodreads, which I will link in the description box if you're interested in keeping more up to date with what I'm reading. But yeah, and we're in my living room today. We're switching up the location. I thought this was just going to be a cozy, quite chatty video, so I thought I'd just get comfortable in my living room in front of the Christmas tree. That's what today's video is going to be. I really hope you enjoy it. If you do enjoy this video, do let me know by giving this video a thumbs up, and I will film these going forward every season. Okay, starting off with what I read in autumn. The first book that I mentioned in my autumn TBR was Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors. I did actually really enjoy that. I did mention that in a recent favourites video though, so I don't want to talk about that too much. I will link the favourites video in the cards if you're interested in knowing my thoughts more about the book, but I did really enjoy it. I mean, I've got her book Blue Sisters on my Christmas list. I'm hoping to get that for Christmas, so I really enjoyed her writing. So the first book I actually want to talk about in this video is Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman. I read this in October and I actually read this very quickly. I read this in 2 train journeys and it was a really easy read. It was a really good read for October. I definitely recommend reading it around that sort of time of year. This is obviously quite a classic. It has been made into a film, and I did watch the film. The film wasn't my favourite. I don't know if it's because I watched the film too soon after just finished reading the book, but basically the story follows the Owens family and 3 generations of Owens women in particular, and in particular Gillian and Sally, who are sisters, and the strange going-ons around the family, and just kind of follows their lives, where they go with their lives, what they do with their lives, and it's really interesting. There is a magical element to the book. I will say it's not as magically heavy as I thought it was going to be. The magic is kind of a backseat to the story of the characters, and it's just about these Owen women working together to solve this problem that they have. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give the plot of the book away, but I really enjoyed the book. And like I said, I did watch the film. I just didn't enjoy the film. Is different to the book, so if you've watched the film and you go to read the book, don't expect the same story because it is slightly different, and I did definitely prefer the book. I just really like the story of the book, and it doesn't really follow the same story in the film. There's like a character that I really love, a romantic interest for Gillian that's not in the film, that's in the book, and I really loved him. But yeah, it just kind of follows the lives of the Owens women and the strange going on around them. And it's really interesting. It's very like character driven, and I really liked it. It was very interesting, and I love the relationship between Gillian and Sally that they have as sisters, both when they're younger and as they're older, and their lives go like separate ways. But yeah, really love this, and I would recommend reading it if you want a nice easy little magical read. Okay, and then the next book I did get round to reading was The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. It is a small town romance. It is about Jeannie who goes to a small town and is gifted a cafe by her aunt called the Pumpkin Spice Cafe. She becomes the owner of the cafe, and she meets all these characters in this little town, including Logan, who is the local grumpy farmer. Now, this book is very predictable. It's very like romantic driven. You know exactly where it's going, but it's a really enjoyable read. It's just a really fun journey. It's nothing groundbreaking, I would say, but it's a really cute little romantic read. Especially I read this again in October time, and it was a really nice read for that. It was just a really easy read. I think romance reads like this are always a good palette cleanser for me. I will say there were times that I found it a little bit frustrating, because obviously it takes a while for the characters to like get together, and obviously so you have to have a little bit of conflict, and that was a little bit annoying because it was just kind of a lot of miscommunication and not like talking things through. But regardless, I really enjoyed the romance. I felt like the romance held up. I feel like you're picking up this book knowing what you're getting from it, if you know what I mean. But it was just a really nice, easy, quick, cutesy read that I did enjoy reading. So if you're looking for just an easy romance read with a little hint of spice, there's not too much spice in this, but there's a little hint of spice which I think it just added to the story, and it's just a really easy, cute read. There are some other books, something about pancakes, and I think there's a Christmassy one that I did want to kind of read, but I have got a Christmassy romance read that I'm going to talk about in my winter TBR. So, but if you're thinking about reading these and you like a cutesy little easy romance read, I would definitely recommend, because yeah, it delivered. Okay, and then the next book that I read was Autumn by Ali Smith. I really want to read this because I thought it was going to be very seasonally appropriate, and I'm not sure on it, if I'm honest. I did enjoy it. I think there's some beautiful writing in here. There's one tiny little like 2-page chapter about Brexit, which is really beautiful. The all across the country section, if you've read this book you'll know what I mean. I really enjoyed that bit, but this wasn't much of a storyline. It was very confusing. So it kind of touches a little bit on Brexit in little areas, but not like explicitly, and not a lot that it goes into like depth or anything that's part of the plot. It's just kind of a random side story. And then the main story is between Daniel and Elizabeth, who were neighbours, and he's an older man and Elizabeth is going to visit him in a home. But then it kind of touches on art, on things on his life, and some of it is a bit nonsensical, that it's not much of a plot, but I just found it quite confusing. And I think it was lovely writing, like I say, but it was just quite confusing and I didn't really understand what was happening at all the times. So yeah, I didn't find myself like gravitating towards this book. I thought it would be quite a nice quick easy read because it is really short, but I found myself not actually wanting to pick this up, and it did take me actually a while to get through because I just wasn't wanting to pick it up because there wasn't much of a plot to follow. I would be intrigued to read more Ali Smith because I did really enjoy the writing. I just didn't really understand exactly what was going on throughout this book, and it just didn't captivate me as much as I thought it might. But yeah, it also didn't scream autumn to me. It wasn't giving me those autumn vibes that I wanted. That might be a me thing, not really understanding, but it wasn't for me. Okay, and then the next book that I want to talk about is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I really love this. This is fantasy, but I will say it's not very heavy fantasy. It's not like a world that takes you ages to get into. I do feel like there will be more world building as I go through the series, but I feel like there was just enough for me to understand what was happening. It wasn't like really confusing. It wasn't really bogged down with backstory and everything that's happening in this fantasy world. Basically is this land where people live amongst dragons, and people are separated into categories. So when they turn like 18 or 20, around that age, people either go off to study to become a rider, a scribe, or a healer. And the scribes are people who write down their history, note their history, write what's happening on the battlefields and things like that. Healer, as the name suggests, helps with like healing, with medical. And then a rider is someone who has to go through this intense program to become a dragon rider, and then they're stationed at different parts of this world to protect the little land that they all live in. And the story follows Violet Sorrengail, who has always thought she was going to end up being a scribe. She's really into writing and history and things like that. And she's also quite physically weak, and she is basically forced to go down the rider trial, which means she has to go through all of these challenges to prove herself a rider. And all the challenges that they make riders go through can be deadly. A lot of people lose their lives. It's about a 20% pass rate, I think, or something like that. So they enter into the rider school, they go through all these challenges, they have to live through all these challenges, and then if they pass that, then they try to get chosen by a dragon. Some of them don't get chosen by dragons, and it's a really interesting story, and I really like the story of Violet. And like I say, it's a fantasy, but it wasn't confusing to me ever. It's not like bogged down in a lot of world building. I feel like there is more world building to be done, and I think that's going to be explored in the future books because this is going to be part of a book series. I believe there's 2 books at the moment, and there's going to be 5 in total. I think the 3rd one comes out January time. I really enjoyed it. I will say it's kind of split into 2 parts. The first part follows Violet through her journey to trying to become a rider and bonding with dragons and getting through, and all these complications that she has, and because she's the daughter of one of the leaders and therefore she's quite a target. She's quite weak, so a lot of people don't think she's going to be able to do this, and a lot of people who have trained to become riders have been training since they were little kids, and because she thought she was going to be a scribe, she's not gone through that intense training. So she's kind of already behind, and through that she makes friends, she makes enemies, she meets boys. And then the second half is more like the romantic section, and I really enjoyed both. I will say the first part was probably my favourite. The romance was a little bit more predictable, and I will say a lot of what happened in this book was quite predictable to me, but I still really enjoyed the ride. I will say it's kind of like a Hunger Games meets Harry Potter sort of vibe. I will say it's probably not like a YA though, because this romance is quite steamy. I mean, it takes a while to get to the romance. If you're wanting the romance isn't really until like this part of the book. It really like engaged my interest. I felt really invested in the characters, and I really do want to read the second one, which is Iron Flame. I think I'm going to put off reading Iron Flame for a little bit because, like I said, the third book comes out in January, but then I think there's going to be book 4 and 5, and I'm assuming there's going to be like a year in between each book, so I'm in no rush to read number 2 because then I'll have to wait for number 3. And I have heard number 2 is not as good as number 1, but I think number 2 we're going to get into more world building, I presume, because I do think like the world needs a little bit more developing. But I think for a first book in a series, it was really engaging. I'm intrigued to read more, and I really enjoyed it. And yes, it is chunky, but it was quite like a quick, easy read for me. I was a little bit hesitant about reading it for so long, but I really, really enjoyed it, and I really, really loved the story. And I want a dragon. Yeah, it just really, it's like my sort of fantasy. It's like there's enough fantasy element in there, but it's not something that I'm struggling to get my head around. But yeah, really, really enjoyed that. And then the next book that I want to mention is The Virgin Suicides. I've actually just started this. I'm only about 100 pages in. It is quite a short book, so I think it's going to work in its favour because it is quite heavy. As the name would suggest, it is about unalivings. The story follows the 5 Lisbon sisters who are 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and I believe they're all going to unalive themselves. It is quite a heavy read, and I would definitely look up trigger warnings, but it's really, really beautifully written, I will say. You really feel like you're there. The description of the place is really, really well done. And what I'm finding really, really interesting is it's not from the perspective of the Lisbon sisters or the Lisbon parents. It's from an outside perspective of other people in the town, I believe. Like I said, I'm only not even halfway through, so I'm not quite sure where it's going to go, but at the moment the story's being told from an outside perspective, so you don't know fully what's going on in the girls' minds. There's a lot of like town chatter about what's happening within the family, and really it's touching on like coming of age and like that progression from childhood, like not quite into adulthood, in your teen years, those difficult years. And I'm just finding it really, really interesting actually. And yeah, it kind of, because it's told from an outside perspective of the family, it's kind of got this idea that like everyone in the town is so fixated on this family, these 5 teenage girls who are all very beautiful, very like ethereal and mysterious. They keep themselves to themselves, and people like kind of idolize them in a way because so much is unknown about them. And then obviously this like tragedy happens. I'm really enjoying it so far, but like I say, it is quite a heavy read, so I would definitely look up trigger warnings, but it's really, really beautifully written, and I'm enjoying it so far. They're all the books that I've read in autumn. There were a couple of other books that I'm not going to mention because they were book club reads, so I didn't choose them to read them myself, but I have them listed on my Goodreads if you're interested. And then the other 3 books that I mentioned in my autumn TBR were these 3, which I've not actually got around to reading. Kind of been like on-off reading. Like I said, with that Autumn by Ali Smith, that kind of put me behind a little bit, and I think I'm going to carry them through to my winter reads because I actually don't have a thriller in my winter reads, so I think this would be good to add, and I do really, really want to read this book. And then I did mention the Hunger Games in my autumn TBR. I think I'm going to put this off for a little while just because now I've started 4th Wing and I want to read One Dark Window. These are both series, and I feel like I've got a lot in my mind that I want to read in the coming months, so I think I'm going to put off the Hunger Games for a little while just because I don't want to get too involved in too many different series when I've got a lot of other things that I want to read in between. But I definitely want to carry through Private Rites and One Dark Window into my winter TBR. And then the books that I do want to read in winter, I've actually got 5 books here. This could change because I do have quite a lot of books on my Christmas list that I'm excited to read. Some of these I will touch on those. This might switch it up, but these are the 5 that I'm like being drawn to at the moment. So the first one is The Christmas Love Letters. This is actually a book club read, but I did want to mention it because I always do read like a Christmassy book every Christmas, and this is gonna have to be this year's Christmas. I will say last year I read the Dash and Lily series, which I really, really loved, and I would recommend if you want like a cutesy little romance. That is very YA, it's very like PG, so if you like a little bit spice to your romance, that's maybe not for you. But I did really, really enjoy reading those last year because I love the TV show on Netflix. That's a Trilogy little book series that's really, really easy and a cute Christmassy read because they're all set around Christmas. But yeah, this year's is going to be The Christmas Love Letters. Like I say, this is a book club read. I haven't picked this. This does sound like a small town little romance, so I'm intrigued. This is about a woman called Maddie who is married, and then one night her husband walks out in an epic row and he's never seen again. And then 6 years later, Maddie is trying to continue on with her life, and she meets a handsome stranger called Rafe. As Rafe and Maddie get to know each other, they grow closer and a love story of their own seems inevitable. But when Maddie receives a mysterious message, she can't help but wonder whether her own past is as distant as she thought. It sounds intriguing, sounds like a little bit of a twist. I did actually read One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid a couple of years ago, and I really enjoyed that. This is kind of giving me similar vibes, but missing rather than presumed dead. Yeah, I think this is going to be like a cute little Christmassy read. Finish the Virgin Suicides and then I'll probably read that because I've not got long before Christmas. This is just going to be like a cute little Christmassy romancy read because I always like having a little Christmas based read around this time of year. And then the next books that I want to read, the first one is The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. This I have heard a lot about. I know a lot of people love this book, and I believe it is historical fiction. With courage, grace and powerful insight, best-selling author Kristin Hannah captures the epic panorama of World War II and illuminates an intimate part of history seldom seen, the Women's War. The Nightingale tells the story of two sisters separated by years and experience, by ideals, passion and circumstance, each embarking on her own dangerous path towards survival, love and freedom in a war-torn France. I don't know much about this. Normally when I go into books, I try not to know too much about them. I tend to only read the blurb, but I know this is historical fiction. I know it's well loved, and we actually have a Kristin Hannah book coming up in a few months in our book club, and I really want to read this first. And I've heard this is good, like nice winter read. I think it is going to be quite a heavy read because it is around World War II, but I think it's going to be really interesting. I don't really read a lot of historical fiction, but I used to really love history in school, and I would like to read some more historical fiction, so I'm intrigued to read this. And like I said, I've heard really good things, so that sounds right up my alley. Then the next book that I want to read is Days in the Morisaki Bookshop. The reason I've kind of put this on my list is because I feel like winter is the perfect time to have like a really cozy day on the sofa with a pot of tea, and I kind of want to read this in one day, and because it's short I feel like that is very doable, and I just think it sounds like a cute cozy read for the winter months. I also love this cover, and I picked this up ages ago and I've still not read it. It says, from the beginning of summer to early spring I lived at the Morisaki Bookshop. I spent that period of my life in the spare room on the second floor of the store, trying to bury myself in books. The cramped room barely got any light and everything felt damp. It smelled constantly of musty old books. But I will always remember the days I spent there, because that's where my real life began. And I know without a doubt that if not for those days, the rest of my life would have been bland, monotonous and lonely. The bookshop is precious to me. It's a place I'll never forget. A tale of families, love, new beginnings and the comfort that can be found in books. Yeah, just sounds like a really cozy, nice, easy read. I'm really intrigued to get into more Japanese fiction because I read The Travelling Cat Chronicles earlier this year, which is Japanese fiction, and I really loved that, so I want to give this a go. And like I say, I do kind of want to sit and read it in a day because I think that would be just quite cute. I've always kind of wanted to do that, so just sounds like a nice easy read. I do actually believe this has been really popular, so they actually have a second one called More Days at the Morisaki Bookshop, so I'm intrigued to read this, and I feel like that would be a nice easy read. And then the next book that's on my list to read is Sally Rooney, Beautiful World, Where Are You? I have Intermezzo on my Christmas list, and I'm really excited to read that. And I've read Normal People and I've read Conversations with Friends, and I love Sally Rooney's writing. I know she's quite divisive. I know some people don't like her writing at all and don't get the hype, but I loved both Normal People and Conversations with Friends, and I really want to read this. I feel like this is the most divisive one of hers so far, and I would like to read this before I get around to reading Intermezzo. So I think I might read this like in the new year. After reading this like romancy read, I might need something a little bit more interesting. Alice, a novelist, meets Felix, who works in a warehouse, and asks him if he'd like to travel to Rome with her. In Dublin, her best friend Eileen is getting over a breakup and slips back into flirting with Simon, a man she has known since childhood. Alex, Felix, Eileen and Simon are still young, but life is catching up with them. They desire each other, they delude each other, they worry about sex and friendship and the times they live in. Will they find a way to believe in a beautiful world? I just really love Sally Rooney's books. I love the way she writes about relationships, and this one seems really interesting to me because I think it's gonna be a bit more existential and talking about the world around the people as well as just the relationship. I really love the way she writes about relationships, and I'm excited to read this. So yeah, that is on my winter TBR. I can read that and then maybe have a little break before I read Intermezzo at some point. That's if I get it for Christmas. And then the last book on my winter TBR, I really want to read this, but it kind of is off-putting because it's such a chunky book. Like, oh, look at that, that's like probably the longest book I've ever read. And this is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. Last year I read The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and I really loved that book. I loved her writing and I was just hooked. and this is another one of her books I'm really intrigued to read. I've heard really good things. I know quite a lot of people say this one is better than Secret History. I think they're very different novels. I think they're about very different things. Age 13, Theo, son of a devoted mother and an absent father, miraculously survives a catastrophe that otherwise tears his life apart. Alone and rudderless in New York, he is taken in by the family of a wealthy friend. Theo is tormented by longing for his mother, and down the years he clings to the things that most reminds him of her, a small captivating painting that ultimately draws him into the criminal underworld, which just sounds so elusive. I don't really know what to expect from this. I don't really know what it's going to be about. I'm assuming the Goldfinch is the painting, but I'm really intrigued. It sounds like a good, like, again, a good exploration of relationships, about the relationship between Theo and his mother. I think it's going to be a good character exploration of Theo, which is what I really loved in The Secret History. I loved how developed characters were. Some more than others, I will say. There was definitely like 3 main characters that were very well developed, and then there was a couple of side characters that could have been more developed, but I really loved it. So I'm really intrigued to read this, and I do want to read it. I mean, it is 800 and something pages, but this has been on my list to read for a really long time, so I'd like to get around to reading it this winter. But yeah, that is all the books that I wanted to mention in this video, all the books that I read in autumn and all the books I'm planning on reading in the winter months. Obviously this list could change. Like I say, I've got a few books on my Christmas list that I'm really excited to receive, hopefully. We'll see if I'm lucky enough. Yeah, and I do also have a couple of books that I need to read for book club that I've not mentioned in this because I haven't chosen them. But yeah, if you have any recommendations, or if there's any of these books that you've seen that you are like, you need to read that, do let me know in the comments below. I love getting recommendations from other people. I feel like my TBR list is very long. Who knows if I'll ever get around to reading all the books that I ever want to read, but we will try. I've really enjoyed reading in 2024. It's a habit that I've tried to stick to, and I really want to continue that into 2025. That is everything for this video. I will leave all the books that I mentioned listed down below if you want to check any of them out. If you did enjoy this video and like me to make more book content, like I say, I will do these seasonally. Please do give this video a thumbs up, and yeah, if you have any recommendations, let me know in the comments below. There won't be a video next week. I'm taking a little break for Christmas, but I will be back in 2 weeks with a brand new video. Who knows what that's going to be. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and I shall see you all very soon. Goodbye.